The sky was gone, or at least, that's what it felt like. A shadow of steel and fire stretched across the horizon, blotting out the sun. Alien warships, immense and alien in design, hovered above every major city on Earth, their hulls pulsing, with a faint, sinister glow. They moved as if alive, shifting in unison, each a predator circling its prey. Jackson Reeve crouched behind the shattered remains of a freeway overpass, his chest heaving. Smoke and ash choked the air, carrying with it the stench of burning metal and human flesh. Below, the streets were a river of chaos. Cars overturned, civilians screaming, emergency sirens drowned out by the alien hum of weapons charging. He peered through the cracked visor of his helmet, scanning for a pattern. That was all he could do now. Scan, observe, survive. Tanks rolled forward, their engines whining in desperation, only to be vaporized in an instant by a beam of green energy that sliced through steel as though it were paper. Fighter jets streaked across the sky, leaving trails of fire as alien. Turrets picked them off with terrifying precision. It was slaughter, and humanity was the prey. "Reeve!" A voice crackled over the comms, strained and panicked. "What's the status? Do we hold?" Jackson's hands tightened around his rifle. "Holding?" he muttered, his voice hollow. "We're surviving. That's the closest thing to holding we've got." He noticed something the aliens did not expect. Their formations, while terrifyingly precise, were predictable. Each ship mirrored the other, moving in mirrored patterns, almost like dancers following a strict choreography. It was mechanical, rigid, flawed. He swallowed and whispered under his breath, "They think we're predictable. Let's see who's really unpredictable." Above, the warships shifted. A massive beam struck the center of the city, disintegrating a government building in a single, searing pulse. The ground shook, sending Jackson sprawling into the debris. He felt the heat on his face as concrete crumbled around him. His helmet camera was coated in dust, but he squinted through the haze and took note. Each alien strike was calculated, but there was a rhythm, always a beat, always a pattern. A sudden scream cut through the chaos, and Jackson turned to see a small group of civilians trapped under a collapsed wall. His heart raced. He could follow protocol, wait for reinforcements, but there were no reinforcements coming. The city was lost. Survival was now improvisation. He dashed forward, dodging falling debris and pools of molten metal. Alien patrols marched like living tanks, scanning with eerie green sensors. He hugged the shadows, counting their steps, noting their predictable turns. Then, with a silent prayer and a well-timed sprint, he pulled the trapped civilians out, narrowly avoiding the sweep of a mech's massive leg. By the time he returned to cover, panting and scorched by heat, he had a new resolve. Humanity was not going to win this battle in the conventional sense. But maybe, just maybe, they could redefine it. "Command," he said into the comms, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We're not beaten yet. I can see how they move. I can see their pattern. If we survive, we can fight smarter, not harder." Static crackled back. He could hear the doubt in the voice on the other end, the fear. But Jackson didn't wait for permission. He scanned the alien formations again, memorizing every movement, every predictable rhythm. This was not a battle humans could win with firepower. They had nothing to match these ships in speed or strength. But humans had something aliens never anticipated: adaptability, ingenuity, and the audacity to think differently. As the alien shadows shifted over the city, Jackson realized the truth. Humanity's survival was not about brute strength. It was about understanding, improvisation, and daring to see the battle from a new perspective. He took a deep breath, letting the smoke and dust fill his lungs. Above, the warships glimmered, waiting, confident, unchallenged. Below, the city burned, but a small spark remained in the rubble, humanity's spark. Jackson Reeve was ready to ignite it. The morning light was gone. Not just hidden by smoke and ash, but obliterated by fear itself. Humanity's counterattack was underway, and Jackson could see it unravel in real time. From his vantage point atop the wreckage of a crumbled skyscraper, he watched tanks rumble forward across streets pitted with craters. Drones buzzed overhead like metallic hornets, and fighter jets screamed across the sky in tight formations. The humans were giving everything they had, but the aliens weren't impressed. A tank exploded before it even reached the first alien barrier, a brilliant flash that turned steel into molten shards. The driver's scream echoed, then vanished under the roar of another incoming strike. Fighter jets were shot down mid-air, leaving trails of fire that carved the smoke-filled sky like angry brushstrokes. Every countermeasure, every tactic, every human weapon seemed laughably inadequate. Jackson's comms crackled with frantic voices. "Formation broken! Retreat! Retreat!" He clenched his fists around his rifle, jaw tight. There was chaos everywhere. Soldiers scrambling over rubble, civilians trapped, sirens blaring a desperate, relentless wail. And yet amidst the destruction, Jackson noticed the subtle rhythm again. The aliens moved predictably, almost arrogantly. Their confidence wasn't just in their firepower, it was in their assumptions. "Focus," Jackson muttered to himself. "They think they're untouchable. They haven't seen us yet." A squad of human infantry tried flanking maneuvers, but alien sensors detected every step. A green beam sliced the street ahead of them, vaporizing an entire column. Jackson's stomach churned as he counted the losses. Friends, strangers, soldiers, gone in seconds. Still, he observed, every alien mech, every turret, every hovering warship followed a rigid protocol. They didn't anticipate deviation. They didn't anticipate improvisation, and humans were masters of improvisation. He sprinted down a side alley with 3 survivors in tow, soldiers who had been separated from their units, civilians who had nowhere to run. Above them, an alien scout ship scanned the streets, its bright sensors sweeping like the eye of a predator. Jackson held his breath, flattening against a wall as the light passed inches from his face. The hum of alien energy thrummed in the air, almost mocking, almost taunting. Then Jackson acted. He kicked a broken pipe into a pool of burning fuel. The resulting explosion echoed down the alley, drawing the alien patrol away from their path. It was a tiny thing, nothing compared to the annihilation the aliens were raining down. But it worked. The group escaped another fatal sweep. By midday, Jackson realized the truth. Conventional warfare was suicide. Every human force thrown at the aliens crumbled like sandcastles against a tidal wave. And yet, where human instinct, quick thinking, and improvisation were applied, survival was possible. Not victory, yet survival. That was the key. He ducked into a collapsed building to catch his breath, scanning through the smoke and dust. Entire city blocks were gone. The sky glimmered with alien silhouettes, weapons ready, confidence unshakable. But Jackson could see the openings, the predictable beats in their patrols, the rigid repetition in their strikes. Weaknesses no human general could exploit with conventional planning. "Command," he whispered into the comms, voice steady despite exhaustion. "All our attacks failed. Tanks, jets, drones, gone. But I can see their rhythm. If we adapt, if we strike differently, we survive." That's step 1. Static answered him. Fear, panic, confusion. They couldn't think beyond destruction. They were soldiers trained to win battles by force. Jackson was trained to survive them. A sudden explosion rocked the building, showering him with glass and concrete. Dust filled his lungs and he coughed violently. Outside, the alien patrols advanced methodically, scanning, sweeping, executing their predictable algorithm. Jackson pressed himself against a wall, counting seconds. When the sweep passed, he bolted, dragging 2 more survivors behind him. The city burned. Humans fell. The aliens were unchallenged in their power. And yet Jackson realized something critical. Humanity wasn't powerless. Not yet. It wasn't about matching alien firepower. It was about exploiting alien predictability. It was about using ingenuity where strength failed, thinking 3 steps ahead where machines acted on patterns. Humanity could survive if they embraced what made them human: adaptability, intuition, and audacity. Jackson stopped atop another rubble pile and looked across the devastated city. Smoke and fire painted the horizon in strokes of red and gray. The alien warships hovered like silent gods above, confident in their victory. But Jackson's eyes burned with a different kind of fire. Survival wasn't just a gamble, it was a plan. And if humans could survive this, they could strike back smarter, faster in ways the aliens never imagined. He clenched his fists, feeling the spark ignite in his chest. Humanity hadn't lost yet. Not really. They were about to redefine what it meant to fight. The city's skeleton groaned beneath the weight of destruction. Jackson moved silently through the rubble-strewn streets, each step calculated, every shadow a potential threat. The alien warship still hovered above, their sensors sweeping the ground in methodical, unrelenting rhythms. But today, Jackson wasn't running. Today, he was hunting for answers. He had heard rumors. An alien scout ship had crashed in the industrial sector during the first bombardment. It was untouched by human forces, at least so far. Inside, there might be a window into the aliens' strategy, a glimpse at what drove their seemingly unstoppable advance. If humans were to survive, Jackson had to see for himself. The streets twisted like a maze of broken concrete and metal. Fires licked at collapsed buildings, sending plumes of smoke that made the air nearly impossible to breathe. Every corner he passed seemed alive with danger. A sudden metallic screech made him freeze. An alien patrol, smaller and faster than the war machines above, scuttled past, its limbs clicking with precision. Jackson flattened himself against a crumbling wall, counting the seconds as the creature vanished into the shadows. Finally, he reached the wreckage. The scout ship was a grotesque sculpture of alien metal, embedded in the ground like a jagged wound. Its hull glowed faintly, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Jackson's pulse quickened. One wrong move could trigger an automatic, defense or worse, call the fleet down on him. He slipped inside through a torn hatch, moving cautiously. The interior was unlike anything he had ever seen. Walls lined with crystalline conduits that pulsed with green and blue light. Alien symbols, etched into every surface, and machinery that hummed with an intelligence he couldn't comprehend. Sparks from damaged circuits arced across the floor, illuminating his path in brief haunting flashes. Jackson's hand brushed against a console. He hesitated. The technology was unlike anything humans had built. Even touching it felt dangerous. But he had to try. A small scanner he carried emitted a soft beep, then a stream of data flashed across the tiny screen. He studied it feverishly. The ship's logs were encrypted, but patterns emerged. Movement orders, targeting sequences, communication protocols. The aliens weren't invincible. They were predictable, following rigid rules that left them blind to improvisation. A sudden rumble shook the hull. Jackson spun, heart hammering, as the scout ship groaned and sparks flew violently from the ceiling. The ship's damaged core was unstable. He had triggered a chain reaction. He had seconds, maybe less, to escape. He bolted toward the hatch, the floor trembling beneath him. Metal plates tore from the walls, striking the ground with deafening crashes. Outside, the industrial sector was eerily quiet, the alien patrols distracted by the chaos. Jackson darted through the smoke, narrowly avoiding a falling beam that would have ended him instantly. Once clear of the wreckage, he leaned against a scorched shipping container, gasping for breath. In his hands, the scanner's data was a lifeline. The alien battle formations, previously thought flawless, were full of predictable patterns. They reacted to threats in specific sequences, repeated routines they didn't deviate from. If humans could anticipate these patterns, they could turn the aliens' precision against them. Jackson clenched his teeth, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Survival alone wasn't enough. They needed a plan, a way to exploit the enemy's predictability, to fight not harder, but smarter. He traced the movements of alien patrols in the dirt with a stick, visualizing how they could be lured, distracted, or outmaneuvered. The wind carried a distant explosion from the city center, a reminder of the stakes. Humanity was burning beneath alien fire, but Jackson now held something more valuable than weapons: insight. Knowledge was power, and humans had just gained a critical advantage, if they had the courage to use it. He paused on a rooftop, looking at the ruined skyline. Alien warships hovered silently above, unaware that their patterns had been seen, analyzed, and understood. The very thing they relied on, their disciplined, mechanical precision, was now their weakness. Jackson pressed the scanner to his chest. "We're not beaten yet," he whispered to himself, voice barely audible over the wind and distant fires. "We just have to fight smarter, not harder." For the first time since the invasion began, hope flared in his chest. Survival was no longer just an act of desperation, it was a strategy. And with strategy, humans could redefine what it meant to fight. The city was still in ruins, the streets still rivers of smoke and fire. But Jackson knew this. The battle had changed. Humanity had found its first edge, and it was not in weapons, tanks, or jets. It was in something the aliens would never anticipate: the ingenuity, adaptability, and relentless audacity of the human mind. The city was a ghost. Smoke curled from the shattered skeletons of skyscrapers, and the acrid stench of burning metal hung in the air like a heavy fog. Jackson Reeve moved through the ruins, silent and deliberate. Every shadow was a threat, every corner a possible ambush, but this time, he wasn't running. He had a plan. The alien patterns were clear now, etched into his mind like a second heartbeat. Every patrol, every sweep, every strike followed a rhythm, mechanical, predictable. And humans thrived in unpredictability. Jackson's mission was simple in theory: lure the aliens into terrain they couldn't navigate, trap them, and turn their precision against them. The industrial district had been chosen. Narrow streets, collapsed buildings, debris-strewn alleys, terrain where alien mechs designed for open assaults would struggle. Jackson and a small team of soldiers moved through the shadows, planting makeshift traps, tripwires rigged with explosives, hidden pits covered with rubble, magnetic EMP nets to disable smaller machines. It was jury-rigged, messy, and dangerous, but perfect. "Are you sure about this?" asked one of the soldiers, a young recruit named Lila, her voice tight with fear. "We're baiting them into the city. If it fails..." Jackson didn't answer. He only checked the alignment of an EMP net, then nodded toward the alley. "It won't fail if we stay unpredictable. We don't fight like them. We fight like humans." The first sweep came at dusk. Alien patrols glided through the streets, green sensors glowing like malevolent eyes. Jackson's team huddled against walls, hearts pounding. Every step the aliens took triggered a careful calculation in Jackson's mind. Wait, move, detonate, retreat. A mech entered the trap zone first, its massive legs crunching over debris. Jackson held his breath and gave the signal. The EMP net surged, sparks arcing across its frame. The mech convulsed, lights flickering, sensors failing. It toppled into a pit hidden beneath rubble, creating a domino effect as its bulk blocked the street. The humans didn't cheer. They didn't have time. But they allowed themselves a brief nod of grim satisfaction. The aliens reacted quickly, but Jackson had predicted it. Their movements followed the patterns he had seen on the scout ship. Each attempt to reorganize only led them deeper into traps, further into narrow streets where explosions, magnetic pulses, and collapsing debris slowed them to a crawl. From a rooftop perch, Jackson watched, scanning every corner. His mind raced: anticipate, adapt, outthink. The aliens were powerful, but they were blind to improvisation. Humans had only to be unpredictable, and the battlefield shifted in their favor. A sudden screech of metal made him flinch. A smaller drone had slipped through the traps, hovering directly below his perch. Jackson reacted instinctively, hurling a magnetic grenade that disabled it mid-air. Sparks rained down, illuminating his face, and for a moment, the alien ship paused as if uncertain what had just happened. Jackson smiled grimly. They weren't prepared for this. Hours passed. Traps detonated. Mech after mech fell into prepared pitfalls. Patrols scrambled to regain formation. The city shook under the rhythm of explosions and collapsing debris. Yet human casualties remained minimal, not because of strength, but because of foresight, strategy, and daring improvisation. Finally, Jackson radioed his team. "Pull back. Regroup at the extraction point. The trap worked. Now we move." From The shadows. Lila let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. They actually fell for it. Jackson didn't answer immediately. He scanned the ruined streets, noting every pattern the aliens had followed, every mistake they had made. It was more than a victory. It was a lesson. Humanity didn't have to match alien firepower. They only had to understand, adapt, and strike where the enemy was vulnerable. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city. Fires burned orange and red, painting the ruins in violent, cinematic strokes. Alien sensors glowed faintly through the haze, confused and cautious now. They had expected humans to break, or to fight conventionally, but these humans had turned survival into strategy. Jackson allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The trap had worked, but the war was far from over. Survival wasn't victory. It was the first step toward redefining what victory meant. And for the first time, the aliens were beginning to understand that they were no longer facing predictable prey. He looked to his team, exhausted but determined. "We've won the first round," he said quietly, voice carrying over the smoky wind. "But the real fight begins tomorrow, and we're not just going to survive. We're going to make them question every move they make." The city burned around them, but Jackson's eyes burned brighter. Humanity hadn't just fought back. They had shown that their mind, their audacity, and their unpredictability could challenge the impossible, and the aliens would never see it coming. Night had fallen over the ruined city, but Jackson Reeve felt no relief. Darkness was an ally, not a refuge. Every alley, every collapsed building, every flickering street lamp hid danger and opportunity. Tonight, humanity would strike not with sheer firepower, but with audacity. Jackson led a small strike team, no more than 6 soldiers, toward the alien forward base in the industrial sector. The facility had been lightly defended, at least according to the patterns he had mapped. But every step was fraught with risk. Alien patrols larger than humans moved in predictable loops, sensors scanning relentlessly. One misstep would trigger alarms and doom the mission. The streets were eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of alien machinery and the occasional crackle of fire. Jackson signaled, and the team pressed against the shadows, slipping through narrow gaps in ruined buildings. Every footfall was calculated, every breath measured. The city was a labyrinth of danger, a theater of suspense, and Jackson was its conductor. Ahead, the alien base loomed, a jagged structure of black metal and glowing green conduits. Its entrance was guarded by hovering drones, their lights scanning like the eyes of predators. Jackson crouched, pulling out a compact magnetic EMP grenade. "On my mark," he whispered. "We disable their sensors, we move in fast, we plant the charges, no hesitation." The first drone hovered closer, sensors locking onto movement. Jackson's hand flew, releasing the EMP. Sparks erupted, arcs of electricity dancing across the air, and the drone collapsed silently. A shadow passed over the team as the second drone scanned. Jackson's heart pounded, but his mind was steady. Improvisation was their weapon. They moved like phantoms, slipping inside the base through a maintenance hatch Jackson had scouted from above. The interior was alive with alien energy, pulsing lights, humming machinery, and walls lined with symbols that seemed to shimmer with intelligence. Every step was a test. The floor could shift, the walls could trap them, the very environment felt hostile. Jackson's scanner buzzed. The facility housed a small energy core powering defense systems. Destroy it, and the base would be crippled. But reaching it required moving through corridors filled with alien patrols. He gestured, and the team split, shadows flitting silently like ghosts. The first patrol rounded a corner. Jackson timed his strike, tossing a magnetic net that clamped around the mech's sensors. Sparks flew, metal groaned, and the aliens staggered into a wall. The team surged forward, advancing corridor by corridor, the suspense thick enough to taste. Suddenly an alarm blared, a shrill, piercing sound that echoed through the base. Jackson froze. One of the team had been spotted. Alien drones swarmed, their glowing eyes sweeping the corridors. But Jackson didn't panic. Improvisation was their edge. "Move!" he barked. Stick to shadows. Distract. Mislead. Improvise. Explosions rang out as the team used small charges to collapse walls and create new paths, redirecting drones into traps. Sparks, smoke, and fire painted the corridors in chaotic streaks of green and orange. Every turn, every shadow was alive with suspense. The aliens were powerful, but they were predictable. Jackson had learned their rhythms. He bent them, misled them, and weaponized their certainty. Finally, they reached the core. Jackson planted the charges with deliberate care, heart pounding. He glanced back at his team, faces grim, eyes sharp. Seconds later, he triggered the detonation remotely. The core erupted in a burst of green light, sending shockwaves through the base. The humming machinery died. Drones collapsed. Corridors filled with smoke and sparks. They didn't cheer. There was no time. Every second counted. Alarms blared as the base's defenses failed, and Jackson led his team back through the labyrinthine corridors, slipping past patrols now confused and disoriented. Outside, the night sky was streaked with fire and smoke. The base's destruction lit the city like a beacon of defiance. Jackson looked over the horizon, scanning for alien reinforcements. There was none, at least, not yet. Humanity had struck a blow, not with numbers or weapons, but with ingenuity, audacity, and unpredictability. Breathing heavily atop a ruined building, Jackson allowed himself a brief thought. Humans didn't need to match alien strength. They only needed to think differently, to bend, adapt, and strike where the enemy expected nothing. He turned to his team, faces shadowed and glowing in the firelight. "This is how we fight," he said quietly. "Not with brute force, not with predictable attacks. We fight like humans. Smart, fast, unpredictable. That's our advantage. That's how we survive, and how we win in our own way." The city burned around them, alien shadows still looming, but for the first time Jackson felt a surge of hope. Humanity was not just surviving, it was learning to fight back. And with every daring move, every calculated risk, they were redefining the battle entirely. Above, alien warships hovered, confident, unaware that the humans below had turned their own rules against them. And Jackson Reeve, crouched in the shadows, knew the war had only just begun, but this time humanity held the edge. The city was quiet, too quiet. Jackson Reeve crouched atop the shattered remains of a skyscraper, the wind whipping rubble and ash around him. Below, alien patrols moved cautiously, their green sensors sweeping methodically, hesitant now. The unexpected human strikes had shaken them. Their precision, once terrifying, was faltering, but Jackson knew that power alone could still end everything in an instant. The alien's warlord, a towering figure commanding the fleet with cold, unyielding logic, remained unchallenged. And tonight, Jackson had no plan to simply kill or destroy. Tonight he intended to redefine the battle entirely. The warlord's command center was a monolithic structure in the heart of the city, a jagged spire of black metal and glowing conduits, humming with alien energy. Jackson and his team had studied the approach for hours, memorizing patrol routes, sensor sweeps, and entry points. Every step would be a test, every moment a gamble. "Remember," Jackson whispered to his team, "we don't fight him with weapons. We fight him with our minds. We show him we're not predictable. We make him question everything." The streets below were a maze of collapsed vehicles, burning rubble, and flickering fires. Perfect cover for the infiltration. Shadows moved like ghosts as the team advanced, silent and deliberate. Each step closer to the spire increased the tension, the suspense thick enough to taste. Jackson paused at the base of the command center. Alien guards patrolled in a rigid pattern, sensors sweeping the perimeter. He studied them, noting every pause, every predictable rhythm. With a nod, the team moved. Fast, silent, slipping past patrols as if they were part of the shadows themselves. Inside, the corridors were alive with alien energy. Walls hummed, pulsed, and shifted slightly as if reacting to the intruders. Jackson led the way, heart pounding, every sense alert. The suspense was electric. One misstep, one misread movement, and the warlord would be alerted. Finally, they reached the warlord's chamber. The alien stood at the center, massive and imposing, eyes glowing with intelligence and fury. Jackson stepped forward alone, hands empty, every heartbeat amplified by tension. "You've been efficient," the warlord intoned, voice resonating like metal grinding on stone. "But you cannot defeat me. You cannot defeat my logic." Jackson tilted his head, studying the alien. "Logic," he said, voice steady despite the fear thrumming through him. "You mean rigid rules. You rely on patterns, repetition, predictability. You think it's unbeatable. But humans—" He let a pause stretch, letting suspense coil. "Humans don't fight like that," he demonstrated, subtly manipulating the environment. Lights flickered, corridors shifted, alarms misdirected, shadows moving unpredictably as his team triggered silent devices throughout the structure. The warlord's sensors, reliant on patterns, began to fail. Confusion flickered across his features. "You cannot predict us," Jackson said. "You can't calculate every move. You can't anticipate audacity." The warlord stepped forward, massive claws raised but hesitated. For the first time, his confidence wavered. The humans were bending his rules, rewriting his expectations, turning his structured battle into chaos. Jackson pressed the advantage. "We didn't come to destroy. We came to make you question your strategy. You think victory is firepower, but true victory is understanding your opponent. And now you do not understand us." The alien paused, the glow of its eyes flickering. Every machine and patrol under its command faltered as if uncertainty was contagious. Jackson could see the realization dawn. Humans were not to be fought like predictable prey. They were unpredictable, audacious, and clever in ways no alien protocol accounted for. The warlord's presence still dominated the room, terrifying in scale, but Jackson's mind was clear. He had redefined the battle. Victory was not destruction. Victory was forcing the enemy to rethink, to hesitate, to fear. The humans hadn't just survived. They had altered the very rules of engagement. A tense silence filled the chamber. Outside, the city waited, burning yet alive. Jackson could feel the weight of the moment. This confrontation was not about who could kill more, who could shoot straighter. It was about bending the enemy's perception. And in this, humanity had succeeded. "Step back," Jackson said to the warlord, voice calm, resolute. "The next moves are yours. But remember this, we are not predictable. We are human." The warlord stared, silent, uncertain. For the first time, the humans were not merely surviving. They were commanding attention, shaping the battle on their terms, redefining what it meant to fight. Jackson stepped back, letting the tension linger. Outside, the city remained tense, alive with possibility. And Jackson knew, deep in his chest, that humanity's edge was no longer just survival. It was ingenuity, audacity, and the courage to fight on its own terms. The sky was alive with fire. Alien warships, once confident and unchallenged, now hung in hesitant patterns above Earth's ruins. The city below smoked and trembled, but humans moved through it with cautious purpose. Every step, every glance, was loaded with suspense, the tension of survival mixed with the thrill of audacity. Jackson Reeve crouched behind a scorched wall, observing the alien fleet. Their formations wavered, unsure, a stark contrast to the mechanical precision they had once wielded like a weapon. The strikes on their forward base had disrupted more than machinery. They had disrupted certainty, and uncertainty was fatal to the aliens. "Are they really retreating?" whispered Lila, eyes wide as drones struggled to maintain formation. "After everything, they're leaving?" Jackson didn't answer immediately. He scanned the streets below. Alien patrols. Faltered, mechs stuck in collapsed alleys, drones collapsing under EMP interference. The battlefield was chaos, but it was human-made chaos. A carefully orchestrated, unpredictable storm. "They're confused," he said finally, voice low, eyes narrowing. "They've never faced humans who think like this. We're bending their rules, making them hesitate. That hesitation, it's survival." The first alien warship disengaged, retreating toward orbit. The other ships followed slowly, cautiously, unsure if they could continue a campaign against a species so unpredictable. Below, human soldiers emerged from hiding, scanning the streets, alert but emboldened. Jackson moved with them, keeping low, every sense alert. The city was a minefield of debris and danger. Alien machinery could still fire, still crush, but their movements were hesitant now, slowed by confusion. It was a tense dance of shadows, of sparks, of unpredictable encounters. Every step felt like a gamble, but the humans had the advantage, unpredictability itself. He ducked behind a collapsed overpass as a mech clumsily advanced down the street, its sensors misfiring from earlier EMP strikes. Jackson's hand hovered over a makeshift charge. One flick, one careful throw, and it would topple the machine into a pit he'd rigged days before. The tension was electric, the suspense nearly unbearable. Then he triggered it. The mech toppled with a thunderous crash, dust and debris filling the air. The team pressed forward, moving through the streets like shadows, striking at the faltering alien forces, exploiting hesitation and confusion. Each explosion, each trap, sent a ripple of panic through the enemy ranks. The humans were not just surviving. They were dominating through intellect, agility, and audacity. Above, the warships retreated faster now, their retreat chaotic rather than orderly. Jackson watched, heart pounding, as the once overbearing alien fleet dwindled to silhouettes against the burning horizon. Humanity had not destroyed them, but they had forced them to flee, unsure, shaken, and cautious. In the heart of the city, Jackson paused, looking at the streets lined with the ruins of alien machinery and toppled mechs. Humans were emerging from hiding, exhausted, battered, but alive. They had learned the most crucial lesson of all. Survival wasn't about firepower. It was about thinking differently, adapting, and exploiting every opportunity the enemy overlooked. "Reeve," Lila said, voice trembling. "We did it. We actually survived." Jackson allowed himself a brief nod, scanning the horizon where the alien ships disappeared into orbit. "We did more than survive," he said quietly. "We showed them something they didn't expect. Humanity isn't predictable. Humanity doesn't follow rules. Humanity adapts. Humanity survives. Differently." Smoke rose from the ruins in streaks of orange and gray. Fires burned in uneven patterns across the city, painting a chaotic masterpiece that reflected the battle itself. The humans had lost much, but the spark of ingenuity and audacity blazed brighter than any alien weapon. Jackson turned to his team, their faces grim but proud. "Remember this moment," he said, voice steady over the wind. "We didn't just fight to stay alive. We redefined the battle. And if the aliens think they've seen what humans are capable of, they've only just begun to learn." For the first time, Jackson felt something that had been impossible during the chaos: hope. Humanity was battered, but not broken. They had faced a superior force and survived, not by matching power with power, but by thinking differently, by being clever, by daring to be audacious. The alien retreat was more than a withdrawal. It was acknowledgement. The humans below had forced a superior species to hesitate, to question their assumptions, to recognize that Earth's defenders were not merely flesh and bone, but unpredictable minds with ingenuity as sharp as any weapon. Jackson Reeve stood, atop a rubble-strewn skyscraper, watching the last alien silhouette vanish into the night sky. The city was silent for a brief, suspended heartbeat. And in that silence, Jackson knew one undeniable truth. Humanity hadn't just survived the battle. Humanity had redefined it. The sky was clearing, but the city below still smoked like a wound that refused to close. Alien warships had vanished into orbit, leaving only the shattered remnants of their power behind. The streets were quiet, but the silence was heavy with tension. the kind that followed survival after terror, the kind that hinted at the weight of a lesson learned. Jackson Reeve walked through the ruined avenues, boots crunching over glass and twisted metal. Civilians peeked out from broken windows, soldiers moved cautiously, and the wind carried the acrid scent of burned steel and scorched concrete. Everywhere signs of chaos remained, yet amidst the destruction, there was something stronger: resilience. Humanity had endured. Humanity had outsmarted. Humanity had survived. He stopped atop a collapsed bridge, looking out at the horizon where the alien fleet had retreated. Their departure was not just strategic, it was a concession. Humanity had forced them to hesitate, to doubt, to respect. The unpredictable force that was human ingenuity. A comm signal buzzed. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing alien envoys observing the aftermath from a distant station. The message was clear. The galaxy was watching. The humans who had been written off as weak, as primitive, as predictable, were now under scrutiny. Jackson felt the weight of it pressing down on him, but he also felt exhilaration. He addressed the gathered survivors, soldiers and civilians alike, voice carrying across the smoky ruins. "We didn't win by matching them in strength," he said. "We didn't win by firepower or numbers. We won because we adapted, because we observed, because we dared to think differently when the rules seemed fixed. Humanity survived because humanity is unpredictable, and that unpredictability is our weapon." Every eye in the crowd was on him, faces shadowed by soot and exhaustion, yet glimmering with hope. The suspense of the night's event still clung to the air, the tension from every near-death encounter lingering like a memory. Jackson knew the lesson they had learned. Survival was not enough. To endure in a galaxy that expected weakness, humanity had to embrace its ingenuity, audacity, and relentless adaptability. He gestured toward the skyline where fires still painted the ruins in violent streaks of orange and red. "They thought they could destroy us," he continued. "They thought they could predict us. But every misstep, every hesitation they felt tonight was because we didn't follow their rules. We didn't fight the way they expected. And that is how humanity redefines battle." A hush fell over the crowd. Even in the midst of devastation, the moral was clear. Victory was not always measured in bodies or explosions, but in strategy, creativity, and the courage to defy expectations. In the distance, the alien envoys communicated silently, their glowing forms watching, calculating. Jackson knew the galaxy would never underestimate humans again. The warlord may have retreated, but the lesson had spread beyond one battlefield. Humans were now a force that could not be predicted, a species that would bend rules and turn assumptions against the strongest opponents. He walked along the rubble-strewn streets, observing small groups of survivors helping each other, clearing debris, sharing water, tending to the wounded. The true strength of humanity wasn't only in clever tactics, it was in courage, resilience, and solidarity in the face of annihilation. Jackson paused atop a scorched monument, eyes sweeping the ruined city. For the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had been tested by a superior enemy and had survived. They hadn't won in the conventional sense, but they had done something far more remarkable. They had rewritten the rules of battle, forced an entire alien fleet to retreat, and shown the galaxy that human ingenuity was a weapon more potent than any laser or missile. The sun began to rise, streaking the sky with the first colors of dawn. Smoke still twisted in the wind and the city bore its scars, but the light cut through, illuminating the resolve that Jackson had always known existed in humanity. "This is only the beginning," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "We survived, we adapted, we fought differently, and from now on the galaxy will know, humans are not to be underestimated." Around him, the survivors slowly gathered, the tension of fear giving way to cautious hope. Humanity had faced annihilation and emerged not as victims, but as a species that redefined what it meant to fight, to survive, and to win on its own terms. And above, the alien fleet had learned the most valuable lesson of all. Earth's defenders were not predictable, not powerless, and certainly not weak. Humanity was clever, audacious, and relentless, a force that redefined every battle it fought. Jackson Reeves stood silent for a moment, letting the weight of the victory and the moral settle. The city was in ruins, but humanity was alive, and that was enough. For now, humanity hadn't just survived the war. Humanity had rewritten the rules.